So how we doing? That's it? So how we doing? All right, that's a lot better. Thank you, thank you. So trying to make sure y'all awake. I'm up. This is my fourth city in the last 5 days, so lots of travel going on. So just had to make sure y'all are all here. And look like some of y'all are still a little sleepy, slouching a little bit. I ain't gonna call you out on the left side of the room, but that's how we do it. All right, who's in here who are freshmen? Any freshmen? All right, stop hating on freshmen. Stop it. Sophomores. All right, we got a few sophomores. Juniors. You're not seniors, so calm down. Calm down. All right, seniors. How many of you are fifth year seniors? See, y'all wasn't expecting that one, huh? Okay, I thought so. All right, just had to make sure there, I am glad to be here. This is not the first time I've been in Buffalo. I was here in 2006. TV1, we had an event here, and so they asked me to come in, and I think I was here after that, but I know I was here in 2006. I'm all around this country, going back and forth, doing lots of different things, and so I'm glad to be here, glad to be with you, glad to chat with you. And so last night I was asked the question. So I asked the question, and it actually happened this morning as well. Somebody said, "What are you going to talk about?" I said, "I don't know." Because I don't write speeches, because what happens is I wrote a speech one time, actually twice, and didn't read from the speech, and then I was mad because I spent all that time writing that speech, and I could have been reading a book or playing golf. I woke up this morning, and I worked out, and I was going over my head what I wanted to talk about, and then I began to, for me, everything is also about what does God want me to speak about. And so usually when I walk into a place, I get a sense of the room and discern in terms of sort of where people are. And literally even about 20 minutes ago, I was asked a question in an interview, and the question was, "What are you going to tell the students?" I'm like, "I don't know." I said, "We'll find out when I walk up to the podium." And as I was coming down the hallway, what kept rattling in my head were two words. And anytime I speak, I always have to what we call tag my text. Okay, now who understands what that means? Let me see how many of y'all go to church. If you hear the phrase tag this text, who knows what that means? Y'all are some heathens in this room. How many of y'all go to church? How many of y'all go to a black church? I know y'all have heard the phrase, "Let me tag this text." What are y'all doing in Buffalo with these kids? That is a familiar phrase you will hear in lots of black churches in terms of when a preacher will actually title their sermon. And so I do that because what happens is folks go, "What is you going to leave here?" And they say, "What are you talking about?" "I don't know, I fell asleep." But at least you will know the name of my speech. And so you can at least lie the whole time, and then they'll know exactly what it was. So I shall tag this text, two words, very simple: never settle. I want you to repeat back to me: never settle. Now, all of you are obviously in school, and so history is a huge and important thing for me. And what happens is, how many folks here, you like history? You like history, or you love history? The rest of y'all just clueless. The reason all of your hands should be raised is because you can't understand how we got to this present place in this country, or where we are going, if you have no understanding of history. You have none. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're male or female. I don't care if you're black, white, Hispanic, Asian, Native American. It does not matter. Part of the problem in America today is that we have people who literally have no understanding of history, so therefore they are completely confused as relates to how we got to this place in America. We are operating right now in Black History Month. A lot of you may focus on that. For me, I don't do Black History Month. I do Black History Year. For me, Black history is American history, and so therefore I focus on it every single day. Just like it's a lot of people right now. How many of you have already seen the movie Black Panther? But how many of you have made the effort to find out about real-life African kingdoms as opposed to the fictitious Wakanda? See, that's what I'm saying. See, you can be excited about a fictitious nation as opposed to studying the real-life nations. How many of you realize that right now in the world, 7 of the 10 fastest growing economies are African countries? See, again, if you are caught up in the fictitious world, then you will have no understanding of the real life world. And so I'm not hating on Black Panther. What I am saying is your knowledge needs to go beyond a 2-hour movie. And that really is one of the problems that we have in America now, is that we have people who are walking around today who have no understanding of history, who have no understanding of how we got here, and then they are individuals who are in positions of power, including President of the United States, utterly clueless about history. See, what I mean by this is not a Democrat or Republican thing. This is not a conservative or a liberal thing. What it is that we have people who have literally gone through their lives, who are adults, who are in their 60s and 70s and 80s. And the problem is they have grown up and they've been so focused on his story as opposed to history. How many of you realize that next year in August of 2019, we will commemorate the 400th anniversary of the first 20-odd Africans arriving in America, in Virginia, in 1619? We went through 244 years of slavery in this country. This was mandated. This was government imposed. This was sanctioned by this country. And then there was this period of 12 years called what? See, some of y'all see, finally somebody hollered Reconstruction. Yes, the Reconstruction period. If you want to understand probably what is many considered to be the most important period in the history of this nation for African Americans, it really has been the Reconstruction period. But here's the piece. This is not just about African Americans, because when you look at those 3 Reconstruction amendments, the 13th, the 14th, and the 15th Amendment, you'll realize those were 3 of the most important amendments. Now, then you begin to understand history, you will realize that because America is not the nation that it thinks it is. See, if you did what was right in the beginning, there would be no need for the additional amendments. See, there would be no need for you to outlaw folks who didn't have the ability to vote or discriminate against them with an amendment. See, what African Americans have long said in America is that what we simply want is to be treated like everybody else. When Dr. King talked about freedom, what he was really saying is we want the same thing white folks get the moment they are born, as opposed to having a law passed extending those very rights. See, that's what freedom actually means. And so when I say never settle, that's really what people of African descent have always done in America. They've never settled for anything less than freedom. If you read the writings and the speeches of Dr. King, he talked about black folks having to redeem America. That is, teaching America what it actually means to be a democracy, what it actually means to be a nation of laws, what it means to be a nation where they say that, when they say all men are created equal, forcing America to actually live that. See, part of the problem in this nation is that we've had 2 Americas, one we actually live and one that's actually on a sheet of paper. And those are two different worlds. See, I love it when people talk about the founding fathers, but then they hold them in high esteem, but then forget all the other stuff about the founding fathers. See, people talk, we just had President's Day, and people talk about George Washington, how important he was. But then if you actually read a recent book that laid out how George Washington and his wife Martha, how they pursued a black woman who escaped and who fought for her freedom, they even broke laws trying to recapture her, then you have a whole different understanding of who George Washington really, really was. See, it's one thing, again, to read his story as opposed to history. See, when I talk about those Reconstruction Amendments, the 13th and 14th and 15th Amendments, what you realize was those were not amendments. They were only for African Americans. See, if you are disabled today, when you look at what African Americans have done, if you are disabled in America, you appreciate the American with Disabilities Act. But what you have to understand is that very act also was born out of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. See, if people in this country are celebrating same-sex marriage, but if you appreciate same-sex marriage, you better appreciate black folks, because without the 14th Amendment and the Equal Protection Clause, then you could have no ruling by the Supreme Court when it comes to same-sex marriage. See, if you are a woman and you appreciate the ability to be a doctor or a lawyer or engineer or any of those professional jobs, do understand that that's a result of Title IX, which was passed in 1972. Now, how many folks have heard of Title IX? See, you probably heard about Title IX because in the context of sports. It's always talked about sports. But when the law was passed, it was not passed about sports. Title IX was actually passed to open professional schools in colleges to women. And so you had an explosion of women who were doctors and lawyers and engineers and all of those fields as a result of Title IX. But if you ask somebody where did Title IX come from, they couldn't tell you where Title IX come from. Title IX is a provision of the same 1964 Civil Rights Act. And so when you have all of these women, especially white women in America, who have benefited from the professional schools opening, they got to thank black folks for marching in 1964 to get the Civil Rights Act passed. That's called history. See, I'm trying to paint this picture for you because when African Americans have been fighting for freedom in America, never settling, the reality is other folks have also benefited. And see, it hasn't been just a black thing. It was Arthur Fletcher, of course, who came in when Richard Nixon was elected president in 1968, and then he was the one who was the author of affirmative action. And there's no people who has benefited greater than affirmative action in America than white women in America. That's not a subjective opinion. That's a fundamental fact. I'm saying that because when you talk about black history, black folks have fought for freedom for black folks, realizing that everybody else was benefiting from the very things that they were fighting for. See, I love it when I talk to white conservative evangelicals and they are all caught up in religious freedom, and I laugh at them talking about religious freedom when these are the very same people who use the Bible to condone slavery, the very same people who use the Bible to condone Jim Crow. So I don't quite understand how hyped they are about religious freedom today when they have not always had religious freedom. In fact, if you want to talk about religious freedom, then explain to me why the most segregated hour in America is 10 a.m. on Sunday morning. Now, if you want to discuss religious freedom, we can actually have that conversation. See, what we have to contend with in this country, no matter what your age is, that America is not a perfect nation. And I know when you turn on Fox News and you listen to Sean Hannity and Laura Ingraham and all those folks, they talking about how America is the greatest country in the world and how wonderful America is. That's all fine. It's just like some of y'all may say your mama and your daddy are so wonderful and great, but let's just be clear, your mama and daddy are still human. And so we have to deal with the realities of our flaws in this country if we want to understand how we ought to go forward. But see, for too many of us, we want to ignore the flaws in this country and just say how great we are and how everybody else wants to come here. But it's a lot of folks who are in other countries who don't mind staying just where they are because they're perfectly fine with how their countries are. We are not as perfect as we think we are. And so sometimes we have to understand that. See, I love it when we talk about in this nation, when we love to condemn human rights abuses in other countries, but ignore cops beating folks in America. See, you can't talk about what's happening in China, but you're ignoring what's happening in Compton. See, you can't talk about oppression of women in Saudi Arabia, but then you want to ignore racially segregated cities in America, including the one you're living in. See, let me be clear. Many of you, of course, you were in middle school, of course, when President Barack Obama was elected. Then you had all these folks in the media. I was on CNN at the time, and they were talking about how we're living in this, what do they call it? It was so laughable to me. What did they say? It was, what did they say it was? Post-racial. Yeah, see, I can't even remember the phrase because it was so stupid. See, you can't see. Here's why I need you to understand why that's nonsense. Because see, just because there wasn't a black man elected president does not mean somehow racism left. I mean, please tell me that you are completely rid of racism with a black mayor. In Virginia, Douglas Wilder was elected governor. It's not like racism left. Charlottesville happened last year in Virginia. He was elected governor in the 80s. I'm saying that because we need to get out of this nonsense that somehow the election of one person somehow just changes everything, and all that stuff has just been magically washed away. That simply is not the case in this country. Because see, we love to live in denial. We love to think that we are better than we actually are. And it doesn't mean we have not done things in this country that are great. And I love it when I hear the likes of Tucker Carlson or Sean Hannity, they'll say, but I know you say all those things, but haven't we got better? See, here's what happens. See, there's always this need to be able to reaffirm ourselves. And so we say, but can you please just say stuff got better? Can you stop bringing all that other stuff up? No. I mean, you know it's a different thing when you got a guy like Tucker Carlson who had a job on CNN, got fired, a job on MSNBC, got fired, a job on PBS, got fired, and still got 4 promotions at Fox News. I ain't never heard that happen to anybody black. I ain't never met anybody black got a show on 3 different networks, got fired, and then got a 4th and a 5th show. Woo! If you want to see white privilege, just look at Tucker Carlson. His picture is in the dictionary. See, I'm saying that because, see, when you black in America, you don't get that many shots. Now, if you want to disagree with me, fine. Please bring the evidence, but I would advise you do your research before you come talk to me. Because, see, it's not there. Because, see, we still have 2 Americas. See, this year, 2018, we will commemorate the 50th anniversary of the Kerner Commission. How many of you know about the Kerner Commission? See, some of y'all should be taking notes in here. See, I'm dropping things in here that can expand your education beyond your classroom. And so you might want to, yes, right, pull your phone out, pull the notes section on your iPhone, and you can take notes. There's no need for a pen and pad. And so I missed the Kerner Commission. That's a report you need to read. That report dealt with the race riots in 1967. In that very report, it said there are 2 Americas, one white, one black. They largely blame media for this as well, because American media was essentially white in America. You had very few African Americans who were in the newsrooms. You had African Americans who were not in corporate America, who were shut out of all positions of power in this country. Yes, we had some folks who were elected to political office, but the reality is, in some of the most critical positions in America, you literally had no African Americans in any of those positions. The Kerner Commission talked about the conditions of race riots in 1967. Why should you read that report today? Because if you read the Kerner Commission report today, which was issued in 1968, it sounds exactly like Baltimore and Ferguson. See, city leaders today across America, state leaders today will never read the Kerner Commission, but then when something happens, when there are racial flare-ups, when there are riots in their cities, they'll say, oh my God, what went wrong? Well, go read the same report from 50 years ago, because the same conditions are still there. See, we have somehow just had this glaze over our eyes that, well, we took the colored only signs down, and so we took a lot of those things down. We passed certain laws, and everything else is just so wonderful, really. Well, please tell me, how is it that Donald Trump has appointed nearly all white men to the federal bench to be federal judges, and then only one African American, only one Hispanic, only 3 women, and then somehow you tell me that everything is now wonderful and totally changed? If you want to see the case, in the history of America, no African American has ever run a movie studio. Oh, I know y'all hyped about Black Panther making more than $700 million, but you've never had an African American run any of the major Hollywood studios in this same America. A black man just retired as the CEO of American Express. That's a credit card. But you've never seen any African American run a major Hollywood studio. Ask yourself the question, why? You still have sectors in this country. We still are doing stories where so-and-so is the first. How could you be in 2018, 398 and a half years after the first 20-odd Africans arrived, and we are still having the first black this and the first black that and the first woman this? That makes no sense whatsoever. I'm trying to paint a picture for you, not of one of doom and gloom, but one of opportunity, because, see, your job is to never settle. Because, see, if you say, you know what, this thing ain't gonna never change, this is how it is, it's how it's always going to be, then we will still be the nation that we are. And see, then what happens is we also don't like to necessarily challenge our young folks in this country to step up and do things. When I had the racist, the white supremacist Richard Spencer on my TV show, people said, man, why would you invite that white supremacist on your TV show? I say, well, first of all, I invited him on to show everybody how much of a fool that he is. See, I believe just in exposing people. I believe in embarrassing people. If you dumb and stupid, I'm going to make you look even dumber. And so I wanted people to also understand how white supremacy looks in 2017. See, we have confused ourselves in this nation where we somehow think that, well, it's all about if you got a Klan hood on, if you burning crosses, and then if you just shouting the N-word. No, do understand. You got folks like Richard Spencer, who went to St. Mark's, a private school in Dallas, who went to some of the best schools. And if you ask the question, who was his mentor when he was at Duke University, it was a certain Stephen Miller. Who is Stephen Miller? One of the top advisors in the White House right now to Donald Trump. I'm just trying to let you know that white supremacy in America is dressed up in a suit and a tie and a haircut, and actually is endorsed by the President of the United States. That's simply a fundamental fact. See, I'm laying all of this out because you have an opportunity to be a part of the generation that could change the history of America. See, I'm trying to get you to understand that you can't just go through your high school years, I'm just all about myself, focus on myself, then you go to college doing the exact same thing, when you have to understand you might be very well sitting in the classroom of somebody who might be a city leader or a corporate leader or a community leader 10, 20, 30 years from now, and you better understand the things that they are saying to you personally right now are the very same things they might be saying when they are now in a leadership position. Do understand that male chauvinists are not born that way. Do understand sexists are not born that way. Do understand racists are not born that way. All of those are learned conditions in this country, which means that they were taught from somebody else, which means they came from home, they came from friends, they came from associates, they came from churches, they came from pastors. All of those things are learned behavior, and for too many of us, we don't want to accept that because we say, man, ignore that. I mean, he says that all the time. Well, he might be president one day. He might be governor one day. She might be mayor one day. He might be the CEO one day. Do understand that you should not just say, I'm going to ignore that thing. No, I dare say if you are right now, and let me be real clear. I don't care who you are. If you are white and you have friends who say racist or sexist things, your job is to shut them down, educate them today, because you don't want them to grow up being that person. I'll explain that. So when I was at Texas A&M, it was very interesting. And there are 5 people on the left side who are asleep. I will come off this podium and personally wake you up. I advise y'all to nudge your classmate. So when I was at Texas A&M, I was a sophomore, and we were in one of the dormitories, and it was about 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. We were playing pool, playing ping pong, and I don't even know how this conversation started. But there was a white classmate, and he ended up talking to me and my brother, and he began to talk about, growing up, and he said, you know what, I just got to be honest with y'all. I haven't liked black people for a long time. And me and my brother looking at him like, where this about to go? So he says that when he was a kid, he said they were playing. And one of the kids got mad who was black, and he took their football and went home. And I'm looking at him, and I'm like, you ain't been liking black people all these years because one black kid took your football and went home. I said, and again, in that moment, you have to decide how are you going to respond. Should I cuss this white boy out? Should I say he about the dumbest person I've ever seen in my life? Or should I use the opportunity to educate him in a very nice way how stupid he really is? So this is what I said. I said, you do realize that what you just described happens all over the country. That kids get mad at kids and somebody will take the ball and go home. I said, you do know there are black kids right now who are mad at another black kid for taking a ball. I said, you do know the taking of the ball ain't a black thing. It's a kid thing. And I said, so how have you for the last 7, 8 years gone through life and not liking anybody black because it is one kid? And he's sitting there, and we're talking, and he's realizing, I can see the look in his eye, I'm a fool. But understand, until that very moment, he had never conversed with anybody else black. Not what you're saying, wow, but understand, we actually live in silos. To understand the history of America, to understand your current neighborhood, understand race. Write down covenants. Who knows what housing covenants are? See, that's why y'all got to write this stuff down. See, y'all thought I was just going to come in here and talk about Dr. King and then talk about Rosa Parks and talk about sitting down on the bus. See, y'all didn't realize you got some homework to do. You need to write down housing covenants. Housing covenants in America, what they said was that black people could not live in these neighborhoods. They were literally written into the mortgages of folks saying, if you sell your home, you cannot sell this home to anybody non-white. So if you want to understand not only that, that's housing covenants. You need to write down redlining. How many of you heard of redlining? Okay, I'm going to need y'all to really help. I got the school board president here, and I got some other educators. I'm going to need y'all to make some changes to your school system. Because, now follow me here. Now follow me here. I'm laying some stuff out here, because if you don't understand these phrases I'm using, then you will not understand why you live in a place you live in now and why it looks the way you live, because it's not just about your parents or your friends living there. Redlining was a system in America where the banks literally took a red pen and drew it around areas where black folks largely live and said, we will not make loans to these places. So when you look at your neighborhoods today, and when you go, well, why is that a black neighborhood? Why is that a white neighborhood? Why is that a Hispanic neighborhood? You have to understand how it got that way. You have to understand that when we talk in America right now, the average family in America has $110,000 in wealth. The average African-American family has $5,000 in wealth. What happens is that if you watch Fox News, you think, oh, black folks, they're just lazy. They don't want to go to work. No, what you have to understand is that when you have been frozen out of an education system, frozen out of a job system, and then even you had black folks who had PhDs, all they could do was find jobs being janitors, you begin to say, well, wait a minute, what's going on here? You want to talk about affirmative action? Okay, I want you, who's heard about the GI Bill? Okay, I'm y'all need to write that one down too. I'm telling you, y'all need to make a copy of this for every student because y'all got lots of homework to do. The GI Bill was a government-created bill to allow soldiers after World War II to be able to go to college, to be able to get loans. Well, guess what? If you were a black soldier and you came back from the war, you couldn't use the GI Bill to go to college. You couldn't use the GI Bill to buy a house. You couldn't use that. The greatest expansion of the economy in America took place after World War II. Suburbs sprouted up all across America because of the GI Bill, and that was because you had all of these soldiers returning from World War II who were able to buy homes and washing machines and TVs and all of those things and go to college because of the GI Bill. The GI Bill is considered the greatest affirmative action plan in the history of America, and if you were black, you could not participate because Jim Crow said that was the case. So you got to understand how we got to this place. See, you're walking around right now saying, well, I'm not quite understanding what's going on here and why we're here. Well, you have to understand how this nation was created. This nation was a nation created for white male landowners. Okay, how many of y'all heard about the Electoral College? Electoral College, okay. How many of you know, raise your hand, that the Electoral College was a compromise for slavery? Yeah, I thought so. The very same Electoral College that led to Donald Trump winning, lost the popular vote, won the Electoral College, was created. It was solely because it was a compromise, because rich white landowners did not want the people actually deciding who would be president. They came up with the Electoral College system, which was a way for them to still be able to control who elects presidents. That's why when you vote in the popular vote, your popular vote actually informs the Electoral College. But when you begin to study even our systems, the electors in the Electoral College do not have to vote that way based upon the popular vote, which means they can go another way. That was the compromise, because they did not want the people one day to be able to control who was elected president. A book you should read is called Dark Bargain. This book broke down how race was at the genesis of the entire Constitution. The battles that took place in the writing of our Constitution, race played a significant part. 3/5 compromise, that was about race. That book lays out, you go through the creation of the entire U.S. Constitution, slavery and race was at the heart of nearly everything in it. I'm saying that because you are walking around today in 2018 talking about things happening in America, not even realizing how these very things were created. And then you have somebody who was saying, why are you still talking about slavery? That was so long ago. That was so long ago. But the laws that were created during that period, we still abide by now. I'll give you an example. In Virginia, former Governor Terry McAuliffe, he said he granted voting rights to the formerly incarcerated in Virginia. Republicans sued him, saying you can't just give it to everybody, you must sign each individual order. Now, in Virginia, this is how that law was passed. In 1902, I believe, a white legislator in Virginia said on the floor of the Virginia House of Delegates, we are passing this law to keep the darkies from voting. That was the quote. So for more than 100 years in Virginia, Virginia governors and Virginia elected officials were saying we will not grant a formerly incarcerated, former felons, the right to vote. And the foundation of that, the motivation for that very law, was to keep black folks from voting. And so if you don't understand the very foundation of something, then you don't know how to change it. You can't just say it is what it is. That cannot be your motivation. You have the ability to actually change it. And so I'm saying this to you because if you are not aware of this, then you're not fully aware of how we got to this very place. Right now, well, I'll throw this out. Who has heard of an HBCU? Historically Black colleges and universities. HBCUs teach 3% of all black students in America, but are responsible for more than 20% of all African Americans who get professional degrees. You can't show me an HBCU in America that was a state university that was fully funded from the beginning. And so what is happening in this country, people begin to say, well, I don't understand. Well, why can't they do what we do? Why can't, I mean, we're all equal. Why aren't their test grades the same? Well, if the education system was designed where you simply had thousands of dollars more going to certain neighborhoods and then thousands of dollars less going to these neighborhoods in America, remember I said covenants, remember I said redlining, neighborhoods in America are broken down by income. You make this kind of income, you can live in this neighborhood. You make this income, you can't live in this neighborhood. Well, guess what? The folks who make this income in America likely have gone to schools where there were very few black and brown people. And so as a result, you understand how this system simply perpetuates this over and over and over again. You have to understand the true history of America to understand where you are today. So if you're a woman and you want to go into science, you have to understand that men, largely white men, said you can't be a scientist. Frozen out of these fields for centuries. Okay, let me put you this way. Maybe maybe you can understand this here. I told you 20-odd Africans arrived in 1619, right? 244 years of slavery, right? 12 years of Reconstruction, right? Jim Crow started in 1877 with the Great Compromise of 1877, which was a result of the contested election in 1876. It was called the Great Compromise of 1877. Now, nearly 100 years of Jim Crow, right? King assassinated April 4th, 1968, correct? Civil Rights Act was passed in what year? 64. Voting Rights Act passed in what year? 65. Fair Housing Act passed in what year? 68. So if I use 1970 as the marker, when African Americans were technically fully free Americans, what I mean by that is can vote without interference, which we still are dealing with, can live where they want to live, which wasn't technically true. It was technically correct, wasn't fully true. Could still go into hotels, parks, things along those lines. So 1970 was the marker, 1970, that African Americans were technically fully free Americans. That means African Americans have only been technically fully free for 48 years. Let me repeat that. Technically fully free for 48 years. I'm 49. I'll be 50 in November, which means I was born into an America where I was not technically fully free. Let me make it more plain to you. I don't have any children. My oldest niece, just turned 21, which means my oldest niece is the first generation of African Americans born technically fully free. Which means many of you sitting in this room who are African American, you are the first generation of black folks in the history of America born technically fully free. Now you understand the history of America. Now you understand, whoa, wait a minute. That means that everybody in my family before me was not technically fully free? Correct. Mean they could not vote freely, they could not get jobs freely, they could not buy homes freely, they literally could not live the same life as any other white American. I need you to understand that, because when you understand that, now you have to look at America differently. Now you must, when you begin to study history, you must study history differently. Now you must begin to study social sciences differently. Now you must begin to look at English differently. Now you begin to understand when you're sitting in a classroom, now you must look at your textbooks differently, because the people who are in control of the textbooks don't necessarily look like you. I need you to now understand that you now have to begin to question things in a different way, because now you realize how we got to this point in America, which now means you got to change it. See, some of y'all still sitting here asleep, which means that you are sleeping through life, which means that you're going to be sleeping through the efforts to change, which means that you're going to be, some of y'all right now are so excited and hyped about what's happening by young folks in Parkland. And people talking about how we need gun control. You want to understand history? I'll show you history. Black Panthers, they studied the law. No, not the movie Black Panthers. The actual Black Panther Party for self-defense created by Huey P. Newton and others in Oakland. And in fact, if you really want to study this thing, they were not the original Black Panther Party. The original Black Panther Party was a political party founded in Lowndes County, Alabama, that was created so they can actually be able to vote. But that's the actual history. But I'll tell you this here. Black Panthers in California studied the law. The law in California said you could carry long rifles as long as they were pointed in the air. So they studied the law and they said, and I'm sure this is exactly what they said, we about to go scare these white people. So this group of African Americans, Black Panther Party of Self-Defense, they went to the state capitol in California, Sacramento, with these rifles pointed in the air. White people totally freaked out. If you truly, I'm telling you, this is history. This actually happened. They walked into the state capitol, a group of black folks with rifles. The law said it's illegal if you do this. But if the guns are pointed this way, legal. The law said it. Law not written by black people. The law said, if you carrying long rifles pointed in the air, we all good. Guess what happened? Them white folks in California saw them black folks with rifles pointed in the air, and they said, oh, we got to change this law. They went back and changed the law, supported by the NRA, signed into law by Governor Ronald Reagan, who later became president. They changed the law. So if you really, really want gun control in America, have black people buy guns. The law will be changed next week. That's just history. Why am I saying that? Because we've actually had gun control in America when black people went and bought them. Now ask yourself the question. If the law, and I'm sure there are people, some of y'all are like, okay, I can't believe he just said that. please refute what I'm saying. It actually happened. And so I need you to understand there are two worlds in this country. There literally are two worlds. If you don't believe me, I can show you the tape of the number of white men and women in America who jumped out of their cars yelling, cussing, and screaming at a cop, and they still are alive. Why am I saying that? Because I need you to understand that even in 2018, there's a Kerner Commission report, there still are two Americas. And if we are going to change America, you simply can't settle and just say, not my problem, that's their problem, I got my own concerns. That cannot be the case. See, we cannot talk about what I call this fake racial reconciliation in America as opposed to really dealing with it. Because see, even right now, look around this room. I want you to look around the room. See, I'm about to really get y'all attention. Okay. If you are black, look to the person to your left and right. Now I want you to raise your now this gonna be tough for some of y'all, because see, I'm about to show y'all something and y'all about to really trip out. If you are black and a person on your left or right isn't black, raise your hand. No, hold on, no, stop, no, keep your hands raised. I'm trying to make a point here. If you are black and the person on your left or right isn't black, raise your hand. Now the rest of y'all, no, keep your hand raised. Now everybody else, I want you to look around the room and see how few hands are raised. Okay, now put your hands down. Now let me explain that. You can put your hands down. Let me explain that. You might say, I don't see the big deal. Here's what we do. School, for the most part, is what I call a non-voluntary place. Meaning, you don't control who comes to your school. Which means you don't control who lives in your neighborhood, so you don't control that. But what you do control is who you eat lunch with. You do control who you sit on the bus with. You do control who you sit in this church with. If you want to understand why America stays the way it is in many ways, it's because we live in racial silos, which means is we largely go to school with people who are black or white or Hispanic. We go to eat with people who look the same way. And even if we go to a racially diversified school, look at your cafeterias. Who eats lunch together? But see, I'm going to take it even further. I'm about to really mess y'all up. And this is for everybody in here. Raise your hand if at your house someone of a different race has had dinner at your house. And were they, now put your hands down, were they invited by you? Raise your hand. Put your hands down. Were they invited by your parents? Follow me here. See, what happens is we go through this world and we say, oh no, we all get along. We're friends. We go to school together. We play together. We're cheerleaders together. That's my man. That's my boy. We lying. We're lying. Now, I already know most of y'all don't go to church, so I ain't going to ask what it looked like at your church. I'm just messing with you. But it's the same thing. We say we live in a racially diversified city-state country, but we actually don't. There might be numbers, but that's not really how we live. Which means that you have to make a conscious decision to do something different than what you've already been doing. Which means that you have to now challenge yourself to say, how can I talk about wanting a different America if I'm doing the same thing everybody else did before I did? How can I say I want to learn about somebody else if I never make the opportunity to learn who they are? If I've never had a conversation with somebody Muslim and understood and talked about their life, not why are you wearing that, but explain to me why you wear that. To understand. And that's really what's happening right now. We have people who are utterly clueless in this country because they're making no effort to actually learn about who they go to school with, who they work with. And then what happens is that thing manifests itself in the decisions as to who we choose to hire and not to hire, who we choose to sell to and not to sell to, who we choose to work with and live with. And that's one of the reasons why we continue to be the nation that we are, because we have actually fooled ourselves in this country because we never ever really dealt with the racial differences in this country. What we did was we passed a few laws and we said, okay, can we just please just move on? That's what happened during Reconstruction. After several years of Reconstruction, white folks in the country said, look, now we about tired of doing stuff for y'all. It's been 7 years. Yes, but it was 244 years of slavery. 244 years of slavery, and then you say, look, we about done enough. I know some of y'all saying, well, fine, that's 1800s, fine. Another book to go read, Dr. King's book, Chaos or Community, Where Do We Go From Here? He wrote in that book in 1967, published in 68. He said in that book, he said, my biggest concerns will be our white allies. He said, America, it hasn't cost America much to allow us to go to hotels and go to parks and swimming pools. He said the real cost of America, will they write that check to fix what happened over the previous 300 and some odd years? See, that's the deal. See, in this country, after a couple of years, we say, look, we're fine. We did it after slavery and the Civil War. We did it during Reconstruction. We did it after Jim Crow. We did it after L.A. burned down after the Rodney King verdicts. We did it after Ferguson. We did it after Baltimore. We love to move on quickly because we don't want to deal with all the tough stuff. What I'm saying to you, this generation, you must be the one to break this generational curse and say, we are going to deal with our history, because if we don't deal with the previous 398 years, we cannot deal with the next 400 years. You must have that position, which means you must never settle. You must change what's happening. You have the ability to change the course of American history, but you must be willing to have the guts to do so, which means you must be armed with the information to understand that, because if you are not armed with the history of America when it comes to housing and economics, when it comes to jobs, when it comes to sports, when it comes to all of these things, then you don't know how to deal with this. That's why we have people today still struggling with Colin Kaepernick and NFL players protesting the flag, because what many people don't realize, you can look at that flag right now, but do understand every police officer who has beat a suspect has that flag on their patch, on their uniform. To understand the flag, you must understand when American soldiers returned from World War II, they were beaten at the train stations by other soldiers. Here they were fighting together in other countries, fighting for the flag and for the nation, yet when those brothers came back, they were beaten because they were wearing the uniform. Do understand, in World War I, when black women lost their children in other countries, there were two things happen. America flew white mothers on military planes, put them in five-star hotels in other countries to retrieve the bodies of their sons, yet black women could not do that. Same soldiers, same blood, same war, same death, but still treated differently. If you do not understand any of that, you can't change the future. We have the opportunity to change the future. So I do what I do in media. When I'm on ABC, when I'm on TV One, when I'm on MSNBC, when I was on CNN, I was always bringing historical things to the table because I needed people to understand that there's a connection between what is happening right now. How many of you heard about voter suppression? See, a few hands went up. How many of you are 16 right now? 15. See, that means that if you're 15 or older, raise your hand. See, that means that you will be voting in 2020 for the next president. See, when I say voter suppression, see, most people think, oh, he's talking about black people. No, I'm not. Because in Wisconsin in 2016, a county clerk said she removed the early voting location from a college campus because she said too many students were voting Democrat, so she moved it to a far out place with a small parking lot where it's harder to vote because she didn't want the students voting Democrat, and it ain't like that many black folks in Wisconsin. In North Carolina, where basically North Carolina is the Alabama of the 21st century. They were removing early voting locations off the major college campuses because they didn't want young people voting Democrat. They wanted them voting Republican or not voting at all. They wanted to make it tougher for you. In this country, if you're 65 and older, voter ID impacting elderly voters. I'm saying all of that because laws are being passed to keep you from voting. And you might think, well, that's a black thing. No, if you are young and white, young and Hispanic, young and Asian, they're trying to keep you from voting. You must understand all of these things because if you don't understand how we got here, you can't change where we're going. I titled this Never Settle because you have to decide right now, am I going to settle for the America we have today, or do I really want my children's children to live in a different America? Now, let me say that again because some of y'all look at me right now and say, did he just say children? Yes. The decisions that you make today in the classroom, outside the classroom, will have an impact on your children's children. Some of y'all still ain't getting that. Let me explain it further. There were decisions that were made by your grandparents that impacted you, that impact you today. Okay, some of y'all still not getting this. Let me say it again. Something your great grandparents did a century ago made it possible for you to be where you are today. Something your grandparents did, how your grandparents raised your parents, has a direct impact on where you are today, good or bad. Okay, let me explain it further. Your parents or your parent. No, I say parents because even if one parent not in your life, the decisions made by them has an impact on you today. You didn't get here by yourself. And if you did, you need some professional help. Where you live today, you had absolutely no control of. Am I correct? How many of y'all have asthma? You ain't have nothing to do with that. That is either genetic or it's environmental. You had nothing to do with that. I'm saying all of that is because there are things that are in your life right now you had absolutely no control over. You didn't pick where you live. You didn't pick your parents. You didn't pick their morals. You didn't pick their values. You didn't pick any of those things. But you now are moving towards being able to decide what your life is going to be like. And every decision that you make today will have an impact on your children, which means it's going to impact your children's children, which means it's going to impact your children's children's children. So what I'm trying to get you to understand is that you literally can change the next 2 to 3 generations of America by virtue of the decisions you make today. And I leave you with this so you can understand what I'm talking about. And y'all might be saying, but he keep talking about all these books and all this history stuff. And really, can he not talk about meeting Jay-Z or Beyonce? No. Because in fact, let me go ahead and use them as an example. So to understand this, and I'm going to close with this. In 1986, y'all like, I wasn't even here. 1986, I'm sitting in an 11th grade government class, Jack Yates High School, Houston, Texas. And so it's more than about 30 students in the class, and it's career day. And so we're sitting in the classroom, and 2 speakers come in. One, I can't remember her name. She was an Asian municipal judge, Asian female municipal judge in Houston. And then there was this white guy who was in the class. He's like in his 60s or something like that. Okay, so he's in the class. So it's the 2 of them, and they're speaking. So when they finish speaking, they say, the teacher said, all right, it's time for questions. All these folks in the class, man, when is class going to be over? I'm tired of these people speaking. So I'm sitting here looking around. I go, well, fine. I'm going to ask me some questions. Now, I'm at the school there for the Magnet School of Communications. So I begin to hit them with questions. And the guy who's in there, when he introduced himself, he said that he was the former chair of the Texas Republican Party. 1986, Ronald Reagan was president. Ronald Reagan, Republican. So I started hitting homeboy with questions. I started hitting him with questions about public policy, Social Security. I mean, I'm hitting him with questions. Now, I know he's looking at me like, I don't know who this little black kid asking me all these serious questions. But I wish he stopped asking these questions. So when the class was over, my government teacher, Coach Ronald Mumphrey, rest in peace, he asked me to walk him to the next class. So on our way there, we're talking. And, he's, man, you're impressive. I'm like, okay. And so we're talking. And he said, you know, my daughter, she goes to Texas Christian University. They got a great communications program. Man, they could really use a student like you. I was like, oh, okay. Now, I knew TCU was private. We ain't had no private money, so I was kind of like, well, they're going to have to find a lot of money for me to go. And he did. He eventually wrote a letter to the university and said, look, I met this young man in Houston, goes to Magnet School of Communications. Y'all really need to recruit him at your school. And so, like, okay, great. And so, remember, I told you this is 1986. And so, matter of fact, that night he called my parents. He said, man, I just want to tell y'all, y'all did a great job, raising your son. So 3 years later, 3 years go by. I'm at Texas A&M, 1989. And so we're deciding we want to go to the National Association of Black Journalists Convention in New York. Now, we broke. We real broke. Like, we ain't got no money. So we're trying to figure out how are we going to get to New York City to go to this convention. And so I was founder of the chapter. And I said, look, let's do this here. I said, we're going to do this here. We're going to write letters to we're going to write letters to foundations in Texas. So we went and got a book, and there are all these foundations in Texas. And so we looked at what they give money to. So we sent 30 letters to all of these foundations, 30 letters. Rejection, we ain't got no money, no thank you, blah, blah, blah. We get 29 rejection letters. It's like, man, anybody got $200 or something? So one day this letter comes in, And the letter is addressed to me because I actually wrote all the letters, and it said, Mr. Martin, I'm so glad to see this request. I'm also glad to see that you are still focused on your career in journalism, blah, 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 blah. And I have enclosed a check that I hopefully will help defray the cost for you and your fellow Texas A&M students to go to this important convention in New York. And then it's signed George Strake, president of the Strake Foundation. And I'm looking at the letter, and I'm like, that name sounds familiar. See, the George Strake of the Strake Foundation was the same white guy who spoke to my high school class in 1986. No. They ain't what you clap on. You clap on what I'm about to tell you next. So we go to the convention. That's where I run for National Student Representative on the Board of Directors of National Association of Black Journalists. I'm on the board for 2 years. By going to that convention in NABJ, I began to meet significant people in our industry. Nearly every job that I've had in my career since I graduated in 1991 has been a result of the relationships that I built through NABJ. When I ran blackamericaweb.com, I got hired there in 2001. Neil Foote was on the board with me in 1989. That's where we first met. 12 years later, I'm running Tom Joyner's website because Neil was hired to run the website. TV One, I was sitting at the White House around the table asking Donald Trump questions a few weeks ago. I was there representing TV One. Jonathan Rogers was the one who hired me at TV One. Jonathan Rogers is also the one who was on the board with me in 1989. Why am I saying that? It's because I sat in a high school classroom in 1986 asking questions that were pointed, clear, political questions of someone who I did not know. I wasn't offended that he was a former chair of the Texas Republican Party. I wasn't scared that he was a white man. I asked him those questions, impressed him. He remembered it 3 years later, sent us the check. That's what allowed for us to pay for the hotel rooms to go to New York. I leveraged the relationships from that trip in 1989 and then 90 and 91 and 92 and on and on. And I'm standing here today because of the relationships that I built at that convention, but more importantly, had my dad not watched 5 hours of news a day and read 2 newspapers, and had him and my mom not mandated that we read books constantly, that we actually, when we went to the library, we had to check out the maximum number of books, not the minimum number, had to read them in a week and check out the maximum number the following week. Had none of those things happened, I would not have been equipped to ask him a single question, which means I would not have been able to impress him, which means we would not have been able to get the $1,000 check, which means I would not have been able to go to the convention in 1989, which means my career may very well have been altered had I not gone to that convention. So I said, don't clap on us getting a $1,000 check. No, clap on what I did before the $1,000 check to ask the questions that led to the $1,000 check. So I'm saying that a simple decision of me not being like every other student in that classroom, that I had the audacity to be different, the audacity not to settle, the audacity to ask him questions, the audacity to read, to study, to know history. That's how I got his attention. And so out of those 30 students, when I go back to our class reunions, and when they go back and they say, man, hey, this brother left our high school as the best communication student while he was there and since he graduated, in the Texas A&M Ring of Honor for Journalism, and also NABJ Journalist of the Year. All of those things were a result of me being a high school junior who did not think of myself as a high school junior, but who said, I am not going to be like everybody else. I'm going to dare to be different, and I'm going to use my skill set, use my knowledge to be a difference maker in this country. And I would dare say what I've done since then has been focused on that by saying I don't want America to be the same country that it was before. I want to be able to be a change agent. What I'm trying to get you to understand is it doesn't matter if you're a freshman or sophomore, junior or senior. It doesn't matter, like me, my parents who never went to college. My parents never made more than $50,000 combined in their life. But mom and dad is now living in a house that's fully paid for by me. When my mom and daddy had their 50th anniversary last year, we threw them a big party, and I hired the OJs to sing. Some of y'all like, I ain't never heard of OJs. In the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, one of the greatest singing groups of all time. Go to iTunes, you'll figure it out yourself. What I'm saying is that I made decisions in high school that are a direct result of how I am living a life today by what I decided in the same grade you're sitting in. And my nieces, I have no kids. Me and my wife have raised 6 of my nieces. My nieces and nephews now have a different life as a result of the life that I now lead, which means that their children will have a different life. All I'm saying is a single decision, a decision you can make as a freshman or sophomore, junior or senior, could alter the course of history for your life and your family and your family's family, but also for this country. Don't settle. Never settle. Never sit there and say, I can't change history. I'm just one person. The reality is, in your place, in your space, you can change history. You can't do it sleep. You can't do it quiet. You can't do it being weak and meek. You only can do it if you make a decision to say, if I'm able to use this, the reality is this can't be sold, this can't be bought, this can't be traded. This can actually change everything. But if you don't feed this, if you don't build this up, and if you waste this, you can't blame anybody but yourself. Got it. All right, time for questions. Okay, here's the deal. We got rules. We got rules. There are 3 microphones. Here, here, here. Now, they are holding the mic. We don't need you holding the mic. If you grab the mic, feel free to hit them on their hands. We got questions, no sermonettes or speeches. We're going to go here, 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 and then come back. All right, start here. Who has a question on this side of the room? Come on down. Stand up. Step out the aisle. I want your name. I want your class. And what's your question?
Hi, my name is Armani. I'm a senior at South Park High School.
You like Cher, Madonna. You got one name. You're Armani what?
I'm Armani Kimball.
Got it. All right.
My question is, throughout your time in school and throughout your time building a career, what kept you motivated?
Easy. I wanted to eat. Here's the deal. Life is not that hard for me. I didn't want to go hungry. I want to have me a nice place to live. But also, I did this, no lie, y'all. 3 years, so I prayed this here. See, I believe in specific prayers. So I prayed to God. I said, look, God, I said, I need 3 things. I want to make enough money. So one, I can valet park. Because when I was a kid, man, my dad be driving around the mall lot trying to find a spot up close. I was like, man, can we park? We can walk. So I said, I ain't going to do that. I got the valet park. Now, y'all don't know nothing about this here. I'm from Houston. Y'all ain't got this problem. Look, it get 100, 105 in August in Houston. It's hot. So I said, I got to make enough money to run my air conditioner all day long. Okay, some of y'all right now, y'all freezing in y'all house because your mom and dad will not run that heater because See, so thank you. So y'all like, I need to make, y'all go be praying. I want to make enough money, Lord, to run my heat all day. I'm telling you, it's true. When I graduated from college, I came home. Y'all, it's hot. And I'm like, look, I am not sitting in this house sweating. I ain't a kid anymore. I got my own money. So I went to the thermostat. I put that sucker on 65. It was on 80. Man, right. Y'all know what that means. Thermostat on 80, which means it don't kick on unless it get above 80. Drop the temperature back to 80. I said, I can't do that. So I dropped to 65. So the AC unit was right outside my parents' bedroom. Man, my dad came flying out the bedroom. I mean, I hear the door unlocked. He's like, who put this on 65? This is exactly what I did. I was like, had to check. I was like, look, I don't want to hear nothing the rest of the weekend. I'm not sweating. I said, that's going to pay for the light bill the rest of the month. I don't want to hear nothing the rest of the weekend I'm here. My dad was like, yeah, okay, all right, cool. Went back to the room. That bad boy was on 65 the rest of the weekend. So it was like Valet Park. It was that. And also, the third thing was, I am not trying to fix anything. That ain't what I do. Oh, I can do iPad. I can live stream. I can do all that sort of stuff. I can do TV, radio, online, take photos. Look, I ain't fixing nothing. I'm letting y'all know. Light, call somebody. Toilet, ain't my problem. Call somebody. I'm not looking at a book. Look, man, I ain't going to Home Depot. If you want to meet at my most unhappy, I got to go into Home Depot. I'm not fixing nothing. My wife, she like fixing stuff. I'm like, baby, knock yourself out. I ain't doing all that. So I said, I'm going to make me enough money where I can call somebody to fix stuff. And so that was my motivation. That's what it was. All this other stuff, oh, no, I want to learn. No, forget all that. I'm real clear. And it's just like when I was in college. I was in college to get a sheet of paper. I didn't care about no magna cum laude. I didn't care about nothing. Let me tell you something. I graduated college December 1999. Ain't nobody ever asked me to this day for a transcript. Nobody's ever said, what was your grade point average? No, bottom line is, you got a degree, got it, apply for a job. So I didn't even care about that in college. I was in the first day of school, like, what are you here for? To get a sheet of paper to get a job. That was just it. So, so if you got other motivations, knock yourself out. But that's my deal. I'm here to get a sheet of paper and a job to get paid. There's a whole bunch of people who have 4.0s in high school and college right now, looking at me on TV going, dang, how he did that? Because you were studying all day, and I was trying to get a job. Here you go. What we got? Question in the middle. Step on out. In the headband. Come on. Okay, somebody behind you asked the question. I didn't let him know who get to ask the question. Put your hand down. Thank you.
I'm Maya. I'm 16, junior.
You're Maya what?
Maya, 16, junior.
Maya, 16.
Maya Dabney, 16.
Thank you. I'm like, 16 your last name? I'm about to say, you Muslim, like Malcolm X, Maya 16? Go ahead.
And I'm at Sweet Home High School. When did you know that you wanted to stay in communications?
So in Houston, we have an extensive magnet school program. And so what happens is the magnet schools, they come to your middle school and they say this is what we do. And so there were several that I applied for. So it came down to two, the law enforcement, criminal justice magnet school, and then the school of communications. And so I read, like I said, I used to read 300 books a summer. I love sports. And so I was interested in communications for that. And so that's why I went to my magnet high school. So I never changed. And so there were a lot of students who went to our school, none of them in communications. I was one of the few who stayed with it. This is the only thing that I've wanted to do since I was 14. I've had people who come to me and they wanted me to run for political office and do other sort of jobs, and I've turned all of them down. So this is the only thing that I've ever wanted to do. And so I've never changed. I've never altered. And the thing, so let me say this as a part of that. And so, because it drives me crazy. Are there any guidance counselors in here? Any guidance counselors? One or two. Okay, so here's what I need y'all to do. I need y'all to do me a favor. And the same thing. Matter of fact, so for the guidance counselors, for the school board president, for anybody tied to education, I need y'all immediately, I know this is February, immediately to bring folks into your school. And I know we in the church know what the hell they're talking about. I'm saying that for a reason. No, seriously. Here's the problem. There's a lot of kids deciding what they want to major in who know nothing about that industry. Oh, this is my passion. Can you eat your passion? Here's what I mean by that. I don't care if you want to major in art, but you better know you can get a job with that major when you finish college. The problem I have is that too many high school students are leaving high school with no clear understanding of what that industry requires. And so every month, the job stats come out, and the Bureau of Labor Statistics, they lay out the top 20 areas where job creation took place in the previous month. So there are a lot of people who, like, so perfect example, my industry is a declining business in that it's changing, it's shifting. You've had massive loss of jobs in newspaper, in radio, and television, but they've shifted to digital. Well, if you still are thinking traditional newspaper, you're crazy because the industry is changing. If you never know that, you're majoring in something that the job may not be there in 10 years. And so the biggest gripe that I have is that high school students are not getting real, true counseling when it comes to what they potentially want to major in, because you don't have enough people who are from those industries coming in and talking to those students to have a real understanding. So, for instance, I got people who say, "Man, I want to major in engineering." Baby, you are not good at math. So two things are going to happen. You're going to have to get better at math or change your major. And so you go to college campus, folks are wasting all of this time. And so that's a huge gripe of mine, that folks have no clue what their industry requires. So, for instance, I got students who are journalism majors who say, "I'm going to get my master's." And I go, "Why?" And I say, "You do know in our industry, that's not going to add a nickel to your salary. It's not. The industry that I'm in is a skill-based industry. Can you write? Can you talk? Can you report? I mean, it's not." And so folks, so they're increasing their debt. They're getting a master's, and then they're getting out. "Oh, I got a master's for so-and-so." That's nice. Can you write a story? And that's the problem. And so I've met folks who spend thousands of dollars getting a master's, and they say, "Well, I want to teach one day." I'm like, "You 23. What you mean one day?" My advice, get your butt out of college, go get you a job in the industry. 5, 8, 10 years later, you can go back and get your master's. And in fact, if you go get you a job, your company might pay for your master's versus you paying for it. But again, my industry does not require that. It's just like, now, somebody going to get real mad at me, but y'all just going to have to deal with it. I don't care. When I was in college, I knew what my industry required. My industry was skill-based. Can you report? Can you talk your way into a room? Can you get your way? I mean, how can you get the story? So I had students I had a teacher who was an English teacher, and he said, I didn't talk to you to class. I was like, okay, fine. So he said, "Look, you didn't do well on my test. You come to my class late every day, and you're not doing well." I said, "Man, look, I'll be perfectly honest with you. I don't care about this class." No. I need y'all to follow me here. Because some of y'all going, "I said the same thing last week." You are not me. But I need you to understand why I said this. I said, "Look, everything in this class, I can read when I graduate from college." I said, "I'm here to get a job." I had job offers when I was a freshman or a sophomore. I could have gotten jobs in the industry when I was a freshman in college. Me as a freshman in college, I knew more about communications than the seniors were there because of my high school. So college to me actually was like master's, PhD, because what happened in high school. So I said, "Look, I got a choice. I'm working at the newspaper. If I got a choice between reading your 100 pages or writing these stories of the newspaper, you will never win." I said, "Here's what's about to happen." I said, the class was an 8 o'clock class, Tuesdays and Thursdays. I said, "Man, look, I work late at the newspaper." I said, "So I'm going to come to your class late the rest of the semester." I said, "All I need from your class is a D." No. I know some of y'all are sitting there going, did he actually say that? Yes, because I was there to get a college degree. I did not care about grade point because I worked at the newspaper, the television station, the radio station, intern at the black newspaper in the summer. So when I was a senior, I had 150 articles. I had a body of work that other students would have killed for. That's why I got promoted 3 times in the first year and a half I was in the business. That's why when I got to the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, 13 months after graduation, I was one of the top breaking news reporters. I was a City Hall reporter. I covered the David Koresh Waco tragedy. I covered the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building blowing up in Oklahoma City, and I wasn't even out of college for 3 years. I was out of college 7 months when they asked me to be on the team to cover the Republican National Convention in Houston in 1992. The decisions that I made in college were totally geared to my career. You can call me arrogant or cocky, but I knew exactly what my industry required. That's why I did that. And so I really, really want you as high school students to not think about a major, think about the career. What's the job? What does it entail? What do I need to know? And now, as you're in high school, you're positioning yourself for your career. You're deciding things and learning things today for your career. That now means things that may not, your school may not have, you are now pursuing things outside of school that's totally focused on your career if you are clear in terms of what you want. And so that's really what you have to do. And last point is this here. You have to pick a college that's going to allow you to do that. Now, I made a different decision. Texas A&M didn't have a good journalism program. It didn't. It was okay, but it didn't. But I went there because my parents were going to have 3 kids in college at one time. My brother, who was a year in front of me, my sister, who was a year behind me. And so I needed to make a decision that was easier on them by having us in one location. But if that wasn't the case, I would have gone to a much better school of communications. And so a lot of us are choosing, oh, I like that college. No, is that the right college for you, for your career? Those are the kind of decisions that you have to be making. And so when you hear from your teachers, don't say, oh, man, I'm just blowing them off. No, that's critically important. Question. Come on. Step on out. Step out.
This is our
today.
last question.
Huh?
This is our last question.
Hello, what time is it? 11:53. We're going to take 2 more questions from this side. I break rules. How you going to tell me that's the last question? I know, but you're right. We're going to take 2 more questions. Just letting y'all know. Yes.
Demario Johnson, 17.
Hold up. Say it again.
Demario Johnson, 17.
Got it. What's your class? Freshman, sophomore, junior? What's your?
Junior.
Got it.
Who was your inspiration?
So I'm going to switch it up from his question because he had motivation. Again, inspiration for me was to be the absolute best. Mary Waits was my television instructor at Yates High School, and we used to go at it hard. She was like, you are so cocky and arrogant. I was like, yeah, okay, I am. But she said, you're going to leave here the best students ever graduated from here. So the reason we went at it hard because I was hard on my teachers because I wanted to be the best. Now, let me explain that. Now, here's what's interesting. So let me explain y'all how screwed up America is. If you are a great athlete, America will celebrate your work ethic. America will talk about, oh, so-and-so, they worked on their game when they were in elementary school and middle school and high school, and all of a sudden that's how they did everything possible to become a #1 draft pick. They'll laud that, but won't do the same thing if you choose to do it on the academic side. So the day I walked onto Jack Yates High School campus to be in the School of Communication, that's the only reason I was there. Matter of fact, I was on a junior high basketball team, and our coach, Coach Glenn, and me and him did not get along. Because for him, everything was about basketball. Like, man, look, this is something I do. This ain't what I'm going to do. This is something I do. Some of y'all look at me like, what did he just say? Let me say it again. This is not what I'm going to do. It's something I just do. Meaning, I was on a junior high basketball team. I was not trying to play basketball. I didn't want to play high school professional basketball. I didn't care. But see, that was his life. And so when I said I was going to Yates, he went, Yates High School is one of the top sports programs in the country. A few years ago, our basketball team went 40-0, won the national title, was beating teams by 100 points. Just crazy. He went, you going to Yates? You can't play ball at Yates. I said, I don't plan on being a middle school gym teacher. I did. I told you I would snap back. No, because literally, he saw me going to Yates through the basketball team. I said, man, I'm going for a school of communications. I said, I don't care about basketball. That's why it was so funny, too, when one of my niece graduated, I ran to him. All right, Roland, glad to see you doing so well. Don't think I ain't forgot what he said in the 8th grade. I forget nothing. I was like, appreciate that. He thought I was going to play basketball. Huh? So, but that was the deal. But I need you to hear what I just said. I said, I am going to be the best student here. Which meant I could not just say it, I had to do it. Which meant I had to put the work in. Now see, I just lost some of y'all. Some people want to be the best. They don't want to work for it. Which meant when we had football games in the School of Communications, we shot the games. I wasn't going to after parties, which meant we were working. We were shooting events. We were reporting on things. When I got to college, same thing. I wasn't taking road trips. People said, hey, we got this event. Yo, I can't roll. I got this communications deal. Man, why are you doing that? Because I'm trying to be the best. At Texas A&M, the greatest, most well-known journalism major in A&M history was country singer Lyle Lovett. Y'all, he a country singer. A great country singer. I said, ain't no way the best journalism major ever to come through Texas A&M gonna be a country singer. So I was like, I'm gonna change that. Now this is a true story. About 2 years ago, I had met Lyle before, but 2 years ago we were at Texas A&M. He got the Distinguished Alumnus Award, and so I said, Lyle, what's going on? I said, now Lyle, I want you to know, you were my inspiration in college. Now Lyle is thinking country music. I said, no, Lyle, that was not why you were inspiration. I said, Lyle, you were my inspiration in college. This is a quote. I know we're in church. I said, ain't no way in hell, Lyle, I was going to let a country singer be the best journalism. Ain't got nothing to do with journalism. He was like, dang, Roland, you make me feel bad saying that. I said, no, you great country singer. I said, but somebody had to be in journalism to actually be the best journalism student here. So I said, so you were my inspiration. We cracked up laughing at that, but that was it. Now, here's the piece. I had to work for it, which meant I had to understand my craft, refine my craft, study. If you don't put the time in, you can't celebrate. See, I use sports for a reason. You can't celebrate LeBron James or Stephen Curry if you don't celebrate the work they put in to be great. So I need you and every other person here to understand. If it's engineering, if it's art teacher, if it's preaching, I don't care what it is, you must put the work in to be the best at that. And if somebody else is better at that than you study that person and say, what do you do? What are your practice habits? What are your work habits? What are your study habits? What are your reading habits? What are all of that? All of those different things. That's how you achieve greatness. And even to this day, I might be 49, but I would destroy any millennial or anybody in Gen Y when it comes to media. See, follow me here. See, some of y'all look at me like, what do you mean? What I mean by that is, I am still a student. If I put a matter of fact, dude, we're going to take 2 more questions. Do me for a favor. Bring my bag, my black bag, because I need y'all to understand what I'm talking about. What I mean by that is, even to this day, I still am reading, studying what's the latest when it comes to technology, what's the latest when it comes to media, because I want to be the absolute best at what I do today. I don't even say, well, I've achieved this. I got 5 honorary degrees. I got 40 awards. I got 4 NAACP Image Awards. It don't matter. I still want to be the best, not for the awards, but for me to know I'm on top of my game. Question on this side of the room. Where the microphones go? Y'all thought I was joking. Oh, I don't need y'all. Question on the side of the room. Oh, y'all thought I was joking, huh? Come on. Question right here. Come on. Right here. You. Come on. See, I don't need them to hold the microphone. I'll come off the podium. Come on. What's your name? What's your question?
Elijah Sales.
Elijah Seals?
Sales.
All right, what's your question?
Is college worth going to?
Is college worth going to? College is worth going to. Follow me here. But I know everybody's not going to go to college, which means that you still have to decide what you want to do. There are a lot of colleges that require, there are a lot of jobs that require college level credit. Now let me explain that. Again, you have to make a decision what career you want to have. 65% of all jobs in America are actually trained through community colleges. Okay, let me explain that. I need y'all to hear me, because a lot of people are making the wrong decisions in high school that's costing their family thousands of dollars because of the bad decisions they're making. You have to decide what your career is going to be and how does that match up with the university you're going to. A 4-year university is different from a 2-year university. So it matters what you're majoring in. So let's say you want to be a nurse. More nurses are trained through community colleges than they are through 4-year schools. But here's the problem. Our egos are caught up in the 4-year school. My son and daughter goes to this school. My son and daughter goes to this school. Okay, that's great. But will you be able to get a job? Now, I'm not going to assume everybody in here is going to go to college. But let's say you choose not to go to college. Fine, what you going to do? What are you going to do? What's going to be the career? So you have to think about all of those different things when you're making those decisions. And so that's why counseling matters. Sitting down and breaking these things down and understanding, again, the career. And so I want people to understand that we're living in a society that in many ways they say you need to have a college degree. So if you're going to go to a community college, can you, first of all, you walk away with 2 years with an associate degree. Can you transfer credit to a 4-year school? You look at all of those different things. But there's so many people, there's so many young people today walking. We got more than $1 trillion in student loan debt. And I'll be perfectly honest, because we got a bunch of people who are smart class-wise who are dumb. Because they can pass tests, but they can't think. I need you to work on thinking. Now, follow me when I say thinking. Bring my bag out. Bring my bag out. Okay, so here's the deal. I need y'all to see this here. When I say think, this goes with me wherever I go. Okay? Wherever I go. And what you'll see in here, I call this my gear bag. This is my gear bag. I roll with 5 HD cameras, a laptop, 2 iPads. I can go live from anywhere. If I got in here before, because I didn't realize they were live streaming, I got Tear Deck encoder in here, which I could attach to their equipment here, which will allow me to live stream my speech to all 3 of my social media platforms, which reach more than 2 million people. I don't need somebody to hook it up. I know how to hook it up. I can shoot, I can edit, I can do all of that. This goes wherever I go. News breaks out, I'm good. I don't need no help. I got it right here. I'm saying that's only because I am still learning. And so I want you, when it comes to college, I need you to think about your career. What is it you want to do? And then what does that job require? And then it becomes, okay, then where should I go? Our society is saying we need you to go to college, but I need you to make smart decisions. I had one of my nieces, she said, I want to go to Oxford. I said, that's nice. How you going to pay for it? Because my money ain't Oxford money. No, follow me here. I don't get caught up in that stuff. I'm not trying to have my parents go broke trying to send me to school just because I want to go there. We're going to where my money can send us. You have to make smart decisions. It makes no. I met a dude at an event who wants to be a college professor, who was crying about, well, man, why this was 2011, man, why should I vote for Obama again? I got $120,000 in college in student loan debt. I'm never going to be able to pay it back. I'm currently going to Tulane. And I said, what undergrad did you go to? He said, Xavier. He said, I got my undergrad, my master's at Xavier in Louisiana. I said, and you going to Tulane for a PhD? He said, yeah. I said, who told you to go to 3 private schools? He goes, what do you mean? I said, you went to Xavier for undergrad and master's. That's a private school. I said, and you're going to Tulane, another private school for your PhD. I said, did it ever dawn on you? You don't have private school money? And you should have went to a state school? And he's looking at me, now he mad. I said, so your loan debt might now be $75,000 instead of $150, that's what he said it was. And he was mad at Obama. I said, I need you to be mad at you. So we are making horrible decisions. I went to a state university. Mom and dad didn't have private school money. And I couldn't be arrogant by saying, well, I want to be able to go here. No, my brother was a year ahead of me. My sister was behind me. I had 2 other sisters. Roland couldn't be selfish. I knew I'm going to get a job in my career no matter what school I go to. It didn't matter. And so we must be thinking about those things and making those decisions when it comes to college. All right, I got a last question in the middle of the aisle.
We don't have any more time, unfortunately.
I'm going to take this last question in the middle of the aisle.
We have...
We're going to eat some. Hold up. This sister been raising her hand. It's going to be tight and right. What's your question?
Hi, I'm Marlicia McGee. I go to Sweet Home High School. I'm 17. I was wondering how you were able to make such important decisions in college at a young age.
Because I talked to people who were in the career. I spent time in high school talking to people in my industry. And you're sitting here right now, and I'm going to say this last thing, this is the most important thing. Do not go anywhere, and you meet people who are professionals and not say who you are, what do you do, how can I stay in contact with you. So preacher, school board president, attorney, judge, police, state senator, no matter who you meet, you should be able to say, what do you do, how did you get there, what do you do, but the last thing, you got to learn to stay in contact with people. Can I get your card? Can I get your email? Can I occasionally send you questions? If you don't do that, you've wasted your connection, and you never know who could potentially help you down the line. Do not waste your opportunity. Now we done. See? That was one of the most important questions.